On April 17, 2005, the state chapter in New Jersey celebrated its fifth class to be honored by the National Wrestling Hall of Fame with a Lifetime Service to Wrestling Award presented to Coach John M. Allen. Coach Allen began his lifetime commitment to wrestling some 50 years ago at St. Benedict's Prep School. Coach Allen coached 30 individual champions and 7 national prep champions, the foremost being Mike Caruso, who recorded an 81 wins to 0 loss high school record before earning 3 NCAA championships at Lehigh University. John is an exceptional individual. He has devoted his life in working with young people through athletics, teaching the skills and attitudes fundamental for success in sports, but more importantly, teaching his wrestlers how to win with humility and lose with grace and dignity. Coach Allen has always enjoyed the reputation of being a gentleman coach who brought credit to his profession, teams, schools, community, and family. And now, here is Coach Allen, who will instruct us on skills.
Against certain takedowns, so it can be used offensively on the feet and also defensively on the feet. Drag is useful not only as a takedown but as a defense against certain takedowns, so it can be used offensively on the feet and also defensively on the feet. And when kneeling, there are certain moments when you can use an arm drag offensively and defensively. So drag is very useful. It's used in neutral position. It can also be used when you're the bottom man trying to come out. And we'll try to illustrate several positions from which you can do drag. The most basic drag is off a wrist purchase, where you get the opponent's wrist, you bring it across in front of them, and then you hook the arm with your hand. You don't grab it, you hook it using your hand as the hook. And you step between his feet, turning toes to unlock your hips so they'll be able to rotate easily. And we don't go for the waist, we go for the hamstring, just in case the opponent might be trying to step across us. And you come in behind. From a different angle, we get a wrist. We bring the wrist across in front of the opponent, keeping it down, not letting the wrist come up. We want the arm near the vertical so we can hook it easily and not slip off it. We reach in and step in at the same time, turning our toes as we step, hooking that arm with our hand, and then we go after the hamstring and bring them forward and come in behind them and get the 2 points. If the opponent happens to turn and fall to his hip as he goes down, we would look for RC, reverse cradle. We'll do another basic drag, this time off a high crotch elbow grip. If high crotch is not there, what we can do is sweep our hand inside, rotate it inside, roll it inside, and do sort of a karate chop type action on his upper arm to get his arm in drag position. And again, we go after the drag and take the step simultaneously, go after the hamstring, come in behind it. A different angle. We've got high crotch grip on the elbow. We release there. We roll our hand to the inside, do karate type action, take a step in, turn the toes, go after the hamstring, and come in behind. Now defensively, arm drag could be utilized if an opponent is known to be coming for either single head out or barrel roll, and we anticipate it coming. We can do what's called a limp leg drag. We would draw the leg, do a little short drag action, and go in behind him and get our hands behind the arms. Or we could be the ones on offense, the party on offense, and if we go in for a leg drop and we get caught in a front headlock, when the opponent sprawls, he gets us in front headlock, what we can do is reach across underneath his body and our own and get an upper arm grip, step up to the side, get our other hand in thigh pry position on the inside of his thigh, and just do a little drag action as we slip our head out and get in behind the arm. One more time from a different angle. We've shot in for a leg drop. The opponent has sprawled. We reach under his body and our own, get his upper arm, step up to the side, get our free hand in inside thigh pry position, and do a little drag action on the arm as we slip our head out and get behind the arm.
if we sprawl.
If the opponent shoots in for us and we sprawl on him, what we can do is get him in overhook freeze position. We drape the overhook in, get the tricep on the other side of the hand, and we have his head trapped in there. And from here, what we do is get pry drag started by reaching over with the overhook arm and getting an inside thigh grip with our hand. We press out with the hand and down with our bicep to try to get his hand to come down off our leg. As his hand slides down off the leg, we release on the tricep, get our arm on the other side of his head, and do a little short drag action and get in behind his arms. From a slightly different angle, if we sprawl against the opponent's shot and we get him in overhook freeze position, we can reach in with our overhook hand and get inside thigh grip. We press outward on the leg, downward with our bicep to force his hand down off our leg, which we're stretching back, getting free from his grip. And when we sense it's the right moment, our free hand reaches in there and gets his upper arm, does a little short drag action, gets behind the near arm. Now, anytime from that same angle, all right, anytime we sprawl and we get in overhook position and we're with the intent of doing a little short drag to get a go behind, we're looking to do the pry drag action, we hope that the opponent either tilts his hip a little bit or narrows his base by bringing his knees closer to one another slightly. And if either happens, that's a signal to us to change off from drag to pancake, which is much better because it gives you more than 2 points. It puts the opponent on his back. So it's always something to bear in mind, the change off possibility from drag to pancake. Now, if opponent has gotten in on a leg, and he's the type of individual that does leg lift series, he gets in, and as soon as he gets in, he gets a leg in the air, and he has it between his legs. One of the counter moves to his grip from this position is to pop his head to the outside, hop around a little bit to the side, so you can reach down and get the hamstring. And you get the instep that's between his leg behind his knee, and you get the drag grip on his arm, and you plant him right on his face. One more time, if the opponent has leg lift position and we care to counter move him, one possibility is to pop his head to the outside, hop around just a little bit so you get drag and hamstring grips, and then you bring him forward to his face using that instep behind the far knee to help his head a little bit. Now, there are two types of disengagement drags. One, the opponent shoots for you, you can do what we call a disengagement drag. And two, if you shoot for the opponent, you can do a disengagement drag. Let's say the opponent has shot in for us. He's gone in and we've sprawled well. If we reach over and get a wrist, and the opponent has the intent of disengaging, he'd like to get back up out of there and get away, we look for drag just as the two of us are starting to come apart, but where he's still leaning forward. Drag will be open to us. Or it might be we shot for him, and we're having a little problem completing our takedown, and we'd like to get out from under there. So to prevent quarter Nelson and prevent pancake and prevent pry drag that he might do to us, we get a wrist, and as we start to work out and up, we catch him leaning forward, and we hit that drag. Start to go away, but then we come back toward one another, hit that drag. All right, a couple of other opportunities for drag type movements now. If an opponent has an underhook and we allow him to get a wrist, or he gets that wrist without our allowing, to get out of the position we're in, which is not good, what we can do is bring our wrist across in front of our body, get his upper arm with our overhook hand, and then free our wrist rolling against the thumb, and we now have what we call double drag grip on him. And then we come around to the side where we get a hamstring, and we wouldn't bring him down on his hands. We're liable to break a wrist. What we do is we whirl him down along a circular arc until he hits the mat and we get our points. One more time. There's a whole series of movements that can be done from double drag grip. But we'll just show a couple here. The drag itself and the heel catch follow. The drag itself. We bring our tied up wrist across in front of us. We get his upper arm with our overhook hand. We roll our hand free against the thumb, our wrist free against the thumb. And then we circle around to the side to get a hamstring grip. And then we continue circling until we can whirl him down to the mat safely without breaking one of his wrists and get our 2 points. Now, if the opponent, when we have him in double drag grip already, if we have that double drag grip and he's trying to brace himself, he's trying to pull away, he's planting his feet out in front of himself and he's trying to pull his arms free, that makes him very vulnerable to a heel catch. So what you do is you step between his feet and with one heel block his heel, and then you reach down with your free hand and get the other heel and put him on his backside and you get 2 points. One more time. If he braces his feet, trying to pull his arms away from your grip, that makes him vulnerable to heel catch. You step between his feet, block one heel with your heel, come down with your other hand, and get the other heel and plant him on his butt, and you'll get 2 points for the takedown. All right, we've shown it on film earlier, so we'll just simulate the beginnings of these 2 movements. When you're the bottom man, drag action can prove very useful. If the man hooks your leg and he happens to loop your near arm, you have an opportunity to slip inside and do drag action to counter move him and reverse him and get 2 points for the fact of your movement. Or if he has you sprawled down, prone on your stomach, and he has a tight bar on your near arm and he is straddling your near leg, what you can do is slip inside and do drag action to reverse him and keep him from putting you over on your back with that tight bar. So drag is very useful up on the feet, offensively, defensively, in neutral position, kneeling, offensively and defensively, and it is also very useful at moments, certain moments, when you're down on the mat near the bottom person. All right, we're going to work on duck unders now. Now, we teach a variety of duck unders. From the feet, our basic duck unders, all one set actually. If we have collar and we also have wrist, there are a variety of setups. We'll only show one. We're going to twist the guy's wrist. It'll bring his elbow to the inside. And when he is stimulated that way, he'll want to bring his elbow out, at least a little bit. And that's our signal to take a step for the duck. We step, we bring our head under and up, trying to get the back of our head behind his arm, trying to look at the ceiling, and then we're going to pivot on our down knee by raising our foot up off the mat so that we can easily pivot without friction being a hindrance to our pivot, and we come in behind the man for 2 easy points. Okay? And that's if we have collar and we have wrist. And there are other things that might be done from that same position, but we'll go on to some of those other things as we vary the tie-up position. If we have collar and he has wrist, he's got our wrist, we could do the same wrist twist type action, and we could do some other things as well. And one of the other things that we could do, and that we will do right now, is what we call down chugs on the head. We pull the man's head down, jerking his head downward, and that's a distraction to allow us to raise his wrist up in the air that little bit so we can take that step in, bring our head up, look at the ceiling, raise our foot off the mat, pivot on the down knee, come in behind it for 2 easy points. Now what we don't want to do on a duck under is we don't want to move along an arc. We call that a sissy duck attempt. We want to penetrate forward on a slant. And what we also don't want to do is we don't want to take any false step backward before we go forward. So you have to make sure that you're going along the proper path and you're not adding movement to what is really going to be helpful. The backward step would be a time-consuming step that would disrupt disallow the success of the duck under itself. Now, if we have collar and he has wrist, instead of doing down chugs on his head as a distraction, we can do a lateral push-pull on his head. We move his head one way with our forearm and wrist, and then with our fingers we pull the head back the other way. And with that much distraction, it should be relatively easy to raise his wrist in the air and do duck under action on the arm. Ideally, you want to get your head up behind that arm, back of your head behind that arm, so that you can lean back with the head and look at the ceiling and push him forward that little bit, tip him forward to imbalance him, make it tougher for him to defend himself. Another tie-up from which duck under could be utilized, if you have wrist and he has wrist. You have wrist and he has wrist. You bring the man's hands toward one another. He'll not want that because he thinks you're up to something, so he'll start to bring them apart. When that happens, you duck on the side to which he has your wrist. That's usually the better side to duck to. You could go either side, but usually it's best to duck against the wrist grip than with a wrist grip. We'll show now another type of duck under from that same tie-up. We call this double duck, where you feint a duck to one side and execute the duck under fully to the other. If you bring the hands together and he brings them apart, and then you step toward the side where you have the wrist with a little short step, and then take a second step to the side where you really intend to complete the duck, you'll be able to catch him with a duck under action to that other side. And you have to be able to feint one side and go the other in this sport, and especially against top quality opposition. So it's a short step to one side, full step to the other, and you complete your duck. All right, as I said earlier, we work a variety of duck unders. To us, there are different types of duck under. And another duck now to add to the list that we've already shown, demonstrated, lectured upon, is what we call gazelle duck, of a standing front headlock. If you have a standing front headlock and you sweep the man's arm inward to stimulate a reaction, he'll want to bring his arm outward. At that point, you release on the lock. You then pop his arm, thumb to the front, and at that point, you're able to step in as you would on a duck, get your head under and up, look at the ceiling, raise your foot off the mat, pivot on the down knee, and start to bring them down to the mat. On this one, the beauty of it is it ends in a reverse cradle grip. One more time. If you have a front headlock and you have it from standing and you sweep the man's arm inward, he'll want to bring his arm to the outside. As he does that, you release on your lock, you do a pop on his arm. You don't try to lift his arm, you just try to belt it with your hand so it stays where you've got it in the air there. So you can step in, get your head under and up behind his arm, look at the ceiling, pivot on the down knee, and go after reverse cradle as he goes down. That's gazelle duck to us. All right, another duck under type would be what we call far duck. If you have an underhook and he happens to have a wrist grip, going for the duck under against that wrist grip is a little bit tough to do because he's on an angle facing you. He's not directly facing you. So to shorten the amount of distance that you'd have to travel to execute the duck, you try to force him to face you a little bit, just a little bit. And on this duck, we don't go to the knees. We go into a deep squat and do a body lift, and then we finish off the move once we get him in the air. Now, one of the setups is to crank his arm using our underhook. So I can crank him, rotate a little bit with that arm, and he'll want to face you. And as he does that, he makes himself vulnerable to duck on the other side. So you take the step, get in deep, you take your underhook arm and let it slide down to a waist strap grip. Take your free arm, the one you just freed from his wrist grip using force, and you come in deep behind his crotch and you put him in the air. You get him airborne, and then you do a flying Turk and bring him to the mat. You'll have him trapped in a Turk position, Turk grip, once you get him down. If the man happens to be vertical when you get him in the air, he's not leaning forward, then you'd whip him to the rear. Ideally, you want to get him in the Turk. You hope he is leaning forward that little bit. Here, he's straight up. You just whip him to the rear to get your 2 points taken. Now, one more time off a different setup. The far duck can be utilized. If he has wrist and you have underhook, and you tap his knee, reach in with your tied hand and tap at his knee. Reach across there. That'll probably cause him to face you that little bit. He needs to face you in order for you to be able to execute a duck on that far side. And once again, now you get in deep. You get a deep waist wrap. You get a deep rear crotch grip. You squat, squeeze, pop your hips, get them airborne, and go after that flying turn. All right, we're going to do another duck under type, which we call back duck, because your arm is coming backward, your head is coming out from under him, and his leg is being stretched back. We call it a back duck. Now, it can be done from standing on occasion. More commonly, it's done down in the mat when you're shot in for a single leg drop head in. We'll do it from standing first. If you have his leg up in the air, shot in on a single, you've stood, you've got his leg in the air, and his leg is between your body and his. And he has an overhook grip, he has a wizard grip, and he has your wrist, and his attitude is one to try to stretch his leg back toward the mat, and he's pretty strong, and you feel that the leg is going to go back toward the mat, you're not going to be able to hold it up. Then instead of fighting him, you just unlock, and you bring your arm back to the rear, and you slide your head out from underneath his chest, and you do duck under action on that near side, come in behind him, and then of course you'd have to bring him to the mat to get you 2 points. One more time from a different angle. You're in on a single leg drop, and you've stood with it, and you've got his leg up in the air, and his leg is between your body and his. He's got an overhook, he's got your wrist, he's trying to stretch his leg back toward the mat. Free it. What you'll want to do is release on the grip that you have and do a back duck action. You bring your arm to the rear, slip your head out from under, do duck under action, and come in behind him, bring him to the mat, and get 2 points. Now down on the mat, if you shoot in on a single head in, and the opponent stretches his leg way back, you're in there pretty good. You got in there pretty good, but he was pretty effective at stretching his leg back. You can post with one hand for balance, and then bring your elbow to the rear, slip your head out from under, and come in behind it. It's sort of a loose out, a one-handed loose out movement from a single leg drop position. You're in on a single, and the opponent's pretty strong of leg, and he's able to stretch his leg back. Instead of fighting it, you post your hand to your elbow, and you bring your arm to the rear, elbow to the rear, head out from under his chest or abdomen, and slip in behind him with duck under action. We call that a back duck from kneeling. So to us, there are a half a dozen duck unders. There's the basic duck under, all various setups. There's the gazone duck from a front headlock. There's far duck. There's back duck. There's double duck. And now as the sixth one, we'll show counter duck. If the opponent is in on us and he's got a leg up in the air, the same position we had his leg just previous to this, and he happens to decide, because our head's down a little bit, to go after a standing reverse cradle. We don't really look for that to happen to us, and we don't want to put our head down to really invite it. But if the man goes for it, you can stretch your leg back and do duck under action, come in behind him, bring him to the mat, you'll get yourself 2 points. One more time. If he has the leg in the air and he is stretching, he is going after a standing reverse cradle, then what we can do is stretch our leg back toward the mat and do duck under action to counter his movement. So there are lots of duck unders. There are lots of opportunities for duck under, and it pays to be with ability to execute duck under. All right, as I itemized, we have 6 different ducks, and we started with standard duck, and we did standard duck off one setup. Now we're going to finish with standard duck. We'll do it off a few more setups. If you have an opponent who, when you tie up with him with a collar grip, wants to get a hold of your collar, and you have a good thumb, one that's not going to get damaged easily, you can do what we call an elbow pop duck. When he reaches up for your collar, you just bang his arm up that little bit so you can do your duck under action and get in behind the arm. Or down on the mat, if you're both kneeling and you have collar and you have his bicep, thumb in front, and you maybe jiggle his head a little bit to stimulate him, he'll want to perhaps reach up and get your collar. He'll come to the inside, as most do, and should, and all you do is release on the arm. You don't try to lift it, and you just take a little step up and go in behind it. In other words, the thumb in front of his bicep will slow down his process, and it gives you a sense of touch so you know what he's up to, that he is coming. He is going to bring his hand inside and up for your collar, and you merely release on the bicep and take a little step up on one foot, slip your head in behind and up. One more time, catch arm. It can be done from standing, it can be done from kneeling. You have his bicep, you jiggle his head a little bit to stimulate him, to want to jiggle your head perhaps, and he therefore is going to try to get his hand inside and up on your collar. You just release on the arm and do a little step and do a little duck under action and get 2 points easily. Now back up on the feet, you have tricep grip, and he has an elbow grip on you. You're going to sweep his arm down in. When he sweeps his arm back up to the outside, you're going to tug with your fingers and take your normal step for the duck under, get your head in behind the arm, and you'll be able to execute a full duck. And if you have tricep, and he has what we call a reverse wrist grip. He doesn't have the normal wrist grip. He turns his hand, palm out, and grabs your wrist. This is what we call ideal duck position. You couldn't ask for better. When he has the wrist that way, his arm is with a natural tendency to have the elbow out and up, and therefore he's in perfect position to do duck under against. You don't have to do much. All you have to do is step, bring your head under and up behind the arm, and be ready to complete the duck under and get the points. We're going to do some duck under combinations now. Some things you can do from a duck feint. You get the guy thinking duck under, and then you go to something else, usually to the offside. In most cases, it'll be to the offside that you'll hit him. All right, we have a collar, and the opponent has wrist. And we're about to do a duck under against the wrist grip. But as we start to penetrate, he withdraws on that side. He brings the arm and leg back. That makes him vulnerable to a cross heel catch. We go across and we get the heel. We pick up on it. It's actually a cross heel pick, and we get ideal RC out of it as a pin grip. One more time. We have collar. He has wrist, or we have wrist. It wouldn't really matter. And we set him up for a duck under. But as we go, he is aware that we're coming, and he withdraws arm and leg. Instead of fighting that and being unsuccessful totally, we go right after the cross heel, pick it up in the air, and finish with an ideal RC. That is a bottom leg grip other than the top leg grip for the RC. Another combo with duck under action preceding is we have tricep, and we're bringing our elbow up in the air to set him up for the duck under. We perhaps have swept his arm inward. He's sweeping it out. We're stepping in for the duck, but he kind of knows we're coming. We stay on our feet, and we do a far back heel and take him to knee. We're with the tendency to do standing duck unders. That is, we stay on our feet when we do our duck under, as some people do. Usually we go to a knee. In most cases, we prefer that. But if we happen to be the type of individual that does a standing duck, we could feint to one side, do a far back heel take to Navy on the other side. One more time, same angle. We're sweeping his arm inward. He sweeps it outward. We're taking our step as we normally would on a duck under. He's alert to our coming. We knew that, and we were ready to step across into a far back heel, take the Navy, and get the 2 points takedown, and then some. This time, we'll do the same action on the arm. We'll sweep his arm down. He'll sweep it out. We'll start the step on a duck as we did before, but instead of attacking that far leg with back heel action, we'll attack it with single head in action. Just glide in there, we're single head in, and we're in position to complete and get the takedown. One more time. We sweep the arm in, he sweeps it out. We step on the duck as we normally would. He sensed we were coming. We attack the single head in, attack the other leg with single head in, or single head out action. Could attack on that other leg with either single head in or single head out. This time we have an underhook, and the opponent has a wrist, and we're trying to set him up for a far duck. We reach down and tap the knee. He withdraws. We step as we normally would, only a little shorter for that far duck. It's not there. We do high crotch on the near side. Okay. One more time. We've got underhook. He has wrist, or we have wrist. And we tap at his knee. And then we take a short step to the far side as if we're coming in on that side for far duck. And then we change direction and come back to the near side with another little tiny step and do high crotch action on the near side and get the points for the takedown. All right, headlock is a natural movement. It's a street fight type movement. And it's a movement, though, that takes a lot of ability to execute, particularly if it's a headlock throw type movement. We're going to do three types of headlock here. The first one we'll do is the one most easily done. It's a sag headlock. If you're up against an opponent who happens to be leaning forward into you and you've got your shoulder in a position where it's under his forehead a little bit, you can thrust your arm across past his head, stretch your leg at the same time so that your hips will go down vertically, and you get him in a headlock grip. Now, legally, you have to have his arm included. On the street, you don't want his arm included. It will be a tighter headlock and more harmful to him if his arm's not included. But here in wrestling, you have to have an arm included. One more time. Sag headlock. If you are in a position where you have your shoulder under his forehead that little bit, it's necessary. He happens to be leaning a little bit, and you're in a position where you can thrust your arm and stretch your leg and let your hips sag. You just rotate him down a little bit toward the mat, and then tie him up with the headlock grip and get the near fall or the pin. Now, second headlock. He shot in for a leg drop. We're going to do he's in on a double. He's got a deep double. He's in good position. We've sprawled on him pretty good, but he's raised up pretty good, and he's going to get us perhaps and probably. We come under the forehead with our arm, and we do a headlock pancake. This pancake, give the pancake action, rotate him over toward his back, and lock up the headlock. Now that's a freestyle move. We emphasize our regular pancake as a preference over a headlock pan. The problem with headlock pan is that if you miss the head or your arm slips off the head, he slips in behind you and he gets the points. Whereas with a standard pancake, if you pancake him properly, he goes over and you get the points. You get all the points. There's not much chance of him slipping out of it. We'll do the headlock pan one more time. He's in on a double. He's in on a deep double. He's raising up. He's going to get us. As a last resort emergency maneuver, we go under the forehead, and we do pancake action, and we lock up a headlock once we've got him dumped over. Now the third headlock is headlock throw. Headlock throw is the one that takes the most practice. Generally speaking, we would use it as a postseason freestyle move. We teach it in season, but we don't put so much emphasis on it in scholastic wrestling freestyle wrestling is where headlock has its greatest application and its greatest good purpose. But if you're good at it and care to work it all year round, it'll bring points and it'll bring big points. All right, we've got the same position, tying up. We've got a collar and a tricep. We're going to do a cross step. We're going to step across in front of the opponent. Then we're going to do a back step with our other leg. And we then get up on our toes so we can pivot more easily and get perpendicular to him. And to launch him, we would simply straighten our legs, and that'll launch him up over the hips. And when he comes over, he'll land perpendicular to our body, and he won't be able to roll through. Now, by roll through, I mean this. If the opponent, when we get a headlock action going, if we go for a headlock, but we don't do it the way it was just demonstrated, we don't do it with the cross step and the back step, but rather what we do is we just step in and cross and try to trip him, he'll roll through. A demonstration of that, we've got the collar, we've got the tricep, and we're going for the headlock, and we're stepping across to trip him. As we dump him down, he'll lock up with us, roll through, he gets the points rather than us. So we don't want that. To prevent that, we launch him in a manner where he land perpendicular to us. So you take that back step and launch him, get him across your hips in a perpendicular fashion. One more time. Headlock throw. Take a little cross step, then a back step, get up on our toes, straighten our legs, launch them perpendicular to our own body axis, and then lock up the headlock. There's no way he can roll through that. Next takedown that we'll show from Thursday's group of takedowns is heel catch. And I'll mention, first of all, that we use heel catch maneuver both for offense and at times for defense against takedowns. Some of the no-nos with regards to heel catch. Heel catch from overhook is risky because you have to beware of turn action, especially if your opponent is balanced and has altitude leverage. So it's a very risky maneuver to go for a heel catch when you have an overhook grip. If the opponent happens to be wrapped or locked on a leg, then you could perhaps go down and get a heel. It wouldn't be so easy, and it'd be less likely that he changed to a turn, because people that have a wrap or a lock don't usually let go of their wrap or lock. But he could. He could release the wrap and go after a turn. So overhook to heel catch is not recommended from standing. Down on a mat, that's something different. We also don't want to push the opponent away and thereby drive the target heel away if we're after a heel catch. Going after a heel that's going away from you isn't going to bring much success. We don't go for a heel catch in general if it's not to be had. We don't want to miss it if it is to be had. We don't want mere attempts. We'd like our people to apply discipline as well as desire, that they time things better, execute better, and succeed more. It's called heel catch, not calf catch. If we're going down for a heel, we're going for the heel. We don't go after the calf. That's not going to bring success on a regular basis, whereas grabbing the heel probably will. Now, some of the basics with regards to heel catch, some of the things to do and think about doing. First of all, you want to know the basic principle of a heel catch. What underlies the success in a heel catch execution is that you draw opponent's foot in, back up, for example, draws foot in, and then you shift weight to that foot, so the foot doesn't disappear as you go for it. And you go right down to the bottom of that foot and go after the heel with your hand in contact with the mat. Also, as you go for the heel catch off a collar grip and are finishing up the catch, backed up a little bit, shifted weight to his foot, brought his head down toward his knee to keep weight on that foot. Grasp the heel and you're dumping him. You've got to get hand across body and underneath his armpit. If you leave it up on the collar, he could perhaps slip past that arm and come up on top of you and get the points. So it's extremely important as a finish to a heel catch off a collar grip that you get hand across body, just underneath the armpit area, to ensure that you, in fact, will get the points for the takedown. Now, also with regards to heel catch and review of the basics there, we say always that you have to get the opponent's heel within reach. You've got to shift the opponent's weight to the foot, freeze its position, so you can find time to get the hand on it. And at the moment of actual catch or pick, the edge of the hand is to be in contact with the mat for optimum leverage, not up on the calf, down on the mat, touching that mat. That's the ideal. Now we're going to show a couple of heel catches off a kip position, an underhook position. The number one move we'll show, the setup that goes with it, is we're going to do a knee tap. When we tap at the man's knee and he pulls that leg away, or even in his mind psychologically withdraws that leg, that puts weight on his other foot, the target foot, and we'll shift additional weight to that foot by using our underhook to press his body down toward his knee. And as we do that, we step between the feet, continue forward until our knee hits, and do a heel catch. One more time from a different angle. We have an underhook. With our free hand, we tap at the knee. He withdraws his foot, at least psychologically, if not physically. That shifts weight onto his other foot. We put additional weight onto that other foot by pressing his upper body down toward his knee. And then we step between the feet, glide in, catch the heel, and get control. And you get a 2-point takedown. A little more exotic move off the underhook, heel catch that's a little more exotic, is where we'll do an inside-out foot sweep. We've got the underhook, and with our forward leg, we step between his legs and sweep outward. That shifts weight onto the actual target foot. We'll continue forward and go right into the same heel catch. That has been much demonstrated over the years, but in honesty, rarely used. It takes a pretty fine heel catch man, pretty good athlete to execute that particular style of heel catch. All right, so the inside-out leg sweep to get a heel catch is pretty exotic. It's a lot easier to, from underhook, from kip grip, get to the heel either via a knee tap or this method we're about to demonstrate now. A very simple method. You have underhook on one side, you have tricep grip on the other. You do a circling action toward the underhook side to draw his target foot in toward you. And you pull on the arm a bit to draw his target foot toward you. Once it's there, all you have to do is step between the feet, just a short step, go for the heel, and dump them to the rear. One more time from a different angle. You have an underhook and a tricep. And instead of going for a knee tap, you do a circular action toward the underhook side, toward your underhook grip side. Draw him in by tugging on the arm, and then take a short step between his feet, go after the heel, and bring him to the mat under control for a 2-point takedown. So those are some moves, heel catch moves from underhook grip. Now we'll do collar and tricep grip, and we'll do a series, a heel pick, heel catch series of moves. And this time we're going to circle in the opposite direction from what we just did. We're going to circle to our left instead of our right, and we're going to drop off and go to a knee. And as we do, we jerk the man in toward us a little bit so that his foot comes forward. And we're going to go for what's called a cross heel pick. We're not going to just catch the foot by putting our hand behind the foot. We're going to actually pick the foot up off the mat. So we sweep it up off the mat, and immediately an ideal RC, reverse cradle, avails itself. So that's the number one move because it leads to a pin grip. The number one move in this series is the cross heel pick. Go one more time from another angle. We'll circle, circle, circle. We drop off that little bit and go to our knee. We jerk that foot in, the target foot in close enough where we can get our hand on it. We bring his head toward his knee, put weight on that foot, and we do a pick on that heel. And right away we sense that we have available to us a reverse cradle grip, and we go after it for the pin. Second move off that action is we do the same initial action. We circle and drop off, and we reach for that foot, that target foot, but he withdraws it. So we go after the other foot. So heel catch, get arm across body, hand under the armpit, we get our takedown still. One more time. This is an attempted cross heel pick. It's not there. Go after the other heel, arm across body, and get control points. Now, if it so happens that you've gone for each foot, and each foot has been withdrawn from you, as we'll now demonstrate, you go after the one, it goes back, you go after the other, it goes back. Your opponent is leaning far forward, so you can do what's called a Leslie snap, which is simply a thrust by your forearm on his head to the side so you can get in behind his arms and get control points. And another potential move off a cross heel pick is if you go for a heel catch and he withdraws his foot, you don't get it, you can do elbow pop duck under. Just do a pop up on his arm, do duck under action, and slip in behind him. So there's a series of movements that can be done off merry-go-round action where you circle, 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 drop off to a knee. You can go for cross heel, not there, near heel, not there, either Leslie snap or even the duck under. The duck under can be utilized even if you don't go after each of the angles. Even if you just go after one, there are moments when the duck under will avail itself. All right, for purpose of ensuring that we have it done from a good angle, we're going to redo the duck under action off an attempted heel catch. So we're going to circle, merry-go-round style, drop off to a knee, reach for the heel. It's not there. He withdraws it. We see that we can do an elbow pop on the other side. So we pop up on the arm, do a little duck under action, a little forward movement of our body, and slip in behind the opponent for a two-point takedown. So duck under is a possibility off heel catch at moments. All right, also with regards to heel catch, we mentioned earlier that we use it on defense as well as on offense. So we'll show a couple ways, a few ways of applying heel catch action defensively. If a man comes in for a single leg drop, single head in, and is going to go into a leg lift position, sometimes as he goes in for that takedown and desires to rise up, before he can get up, you can reach over him, catch a heel, bump him, knock him backward through the opening between his feet, and get control of him before he gets the leg up. If he does get the leg up, chances are great he's going to get the takedown if he knows how to use run the pipe or thigh pry or some combination off that series, that leg lift series. So you got to catch him early. Another moment when you can use heel catch defensively is if you have a quarter Nelson on the opponent. You've sprawled on him. You watch his far foot. If ever he steps up, you can forget the quarter, release there, and go for the heel catch and dump him backward through the opening between his feet, through that path of least resistance where he does not have a foot to impede your action. Or you could be in a simple sprawl with an overhook. No quarter Nelson applied yet. You just sprawled, and he happens to step up. You go down and catch the heel, and then dump him backward through the opening between his feet and get control points. As an exotic heel catch, but workable, if you happen to have the grip, happen to be in position, if your opponent has an underhook on you, you can allow him to get your wrist. When he gets your wrist, you bring your hand across in front of your body so you can get an upper arm grip. Roll your hand free, your wrist free, and now step in between his legs and put a heel behind his heel, and then glide forward and go down for a heel catch. And with your double drag grip, you can effectively work a heel catch. One more time. He has underhook. You allow him to get your wrist. You bring your tied wrist across in front of your body so you can get a hold of his upper arm. Roll your wrist free from his grip. Do a heel block behind his heel, and then glide forward and go down and get his heel, dump him backward. The double drag itself would be an action where you get the double drag grip and you work in a circular motion, grabbing the hamstring to bring him down to the mat. We will demonstrate that right now. He has the underhook. You've secured his upper arm. And now what you do is you'd circle and get his hamstring and then continue circling until you twirl to the mat. So that's the drag action off double drag grip. It's a circular motion so you don't plant him on his hands where he could break a wrist. We're going to demonstrate high crotch, which is perhaps one of the, definitely one of the finest of takedowns. It can be used in pee-wee wrestling, middle school wrestling, junior high school wrestling, college wrestling, freestyle wrestling, Olympic wrestling. It's that fine a takedown. It's that simple to execute and that easy to use if you do practice it and get it down pat. First, some of the things you don't want to do if you are interested to execute high crotch. You don't want to be forehead to forehead in contact. It's worthless to try high crotch from there. The opponent will block your action with his head. You also don't want to be locked too tightly ear to ear, where your head is perhaps against his shoulder, because again, he can block your penetration as you would try to go in for a high crotch. You also don't want to go for the high crotch if his thumb is in the way. His thumb is blocking your bicep. You have to learn how to release that thumb, release yourself from that thumb grip. That takes a special technique. So high crotch is not to be done when you're in forehead to forehead contact or ear to ear, or if the opponent's thumb is in a blocking position. You stay away from it. If you do have the opportunity to go for the high crotch, though, you want to make sure that you execute it. If it avails itself, don't be ashamed, don't hesitate, execute it, and make sure you get the points. Now, some of the basics on a high crotch action. It's a modified duck under is what a high crotch is, or at least the type. All right, some of those basic points in regards to executing a high crotch. First of all, you have to have the grip. Now, you can have a tricep grip and do a high crotch. It is possible. But you've got to be a pretty polished performer to do it from that grip. The ideal grip is to have the underneath grip, have the elbow grip, and you'll know you have the ideal grip because you'll be able to drop your hand down vertically from his elbow, and if your hand can come down vertically, that means you have the correct grip. Now, normally you'd have to set him up. You may have to play with his hand on the other side as a distraction to get him thinking that something's going to happen over there when in fact it is not. And as you do the high crotch, what you do is you lower your hips, you take a penetration step to the outside, and you tug his arm very much forward past your upper body as you do duck under action. As you're doing that, your knee will go to the mat, and your arm will be thrust up between his legs. That's the crotch action, the high crotch action. Now, to complete the move, you raise your foot off the mat, pivot on your down knee, and come in behind him and trap his lower leg with your knees. When you trap his leg like so, he can't scoot away and get back to neutral without you getting the 2 points beforehand. One more time. We've got the ideal grip, the elbow grip, and what we're going to do is play on the other side, just pull a little bit on the other side as if we want something over there. And then when we're ready to go, we take a step as we lower our hips. We tug his arm fully past our upper body, do duck under action, thrust our arm up through the crotch, but don't actually grab the leg. That would only hinder your pivot. It would add friction to the scene as you try to pivot. Just raise your foot off the mat, pivot on your down knee, come in behind them, and do a leg trap with your knees. Now, it is possible to execute that same maneuver, that penetration aspect of the maneuver, and change from single head out to double. That can be done. We will demonstrate that right now, where you have the same high crotch grip. You take the same step, pull the arm, tug the arm past you, tug him forward. But instead of doing a spin out, which is the best way to do it because it's easy and requires no strength, what you could do is change to a single head out right now, then change to a double, and complete the maneuver as you would complete any double leg drop. You dump to the side, look for a finger. Off the high crotch now, you may find that as you're competing against somebody that knows your movements, your style, that you sense that he anticipates that you're going to do a high crotch, even though you're distracting him a bit. If that were to happen, he'll probably withdraw his leg as you go, and as he does that, you just let your head float to the inside and go to another movement. Go to single head in. So one more time. If you go for a high crotch and you anticipate, the opponent is anticipating your high crotch action, then what you can do as you go in is let your head go to the inside and change to single head in and complete single head in as you normally would, any one of the several ways possible. Now, one of the reasons for the high crotch action, the arm up through the crotch, the primary reason why you do it, is if you brought your arm to the outside, you'd be very vulnerable to a turn. The guy would throw you to your back. So to prevent that from happening, that's why you thrust your arm up through the crotch and tend not to really grab the leg. Let your arm hang loose through that opening so that you don't bind yourself and make it difficult to do a pivot. If you don't bind yourself, it's easy to raise your foot up off the mat, pivot on your down knee, and just come in behind them and get points. All right, now we're going to do high crotch from different grip. There are two very fundamental grips. One is that elbow grip we just demonstrated. The other is the kip or underhook grip. If you have an underhook grip and you care to distract the opponent, you can use that same action of playing for the other hand as if you want something to happen over on the other side. You're trying to get his wrist. You're making him think you want his wrist on the other side. And then you could hit the high crotch on the underhook side. And once again, it's a short step and a large tug. You really have to tug his arm past you, which brings his upper body forward, tips him forward, gets him enough off balance, you can penetrate from in behind him. But not only can you distract them playing for the hand, you can also distract them by tapping at a knee. So you can reach in, tap at a knee, he withdraws, you take that same short step and hit high crotch. And get your control points. Again, you've got the underhook, your distraction action to set up the high crotch as you're going to reach in and tap at his knee. He withdraws that leg, even if it's just psychologically and not so much physically. That's enough for you to find him vulnerable, step in, short step, pivot on the down knee after tugging him much forward and get your takedown points. It's a very clean, easy move, and it can be worked even against the very best of wrestlers. Another setup from the underhook position is you can play on the hand, play for the hand on the other side, and as you're doing that, though, you watch his overhook arm. If his hand on that side, the overhook side, starts to move outward, the moment his overhook loosens, he's very vulnerable to high crotch. And you can execute it from behind. One more time. You've got the underhook, he's got the overhook. You're playing on the one side, but you're watching the hand on the other side. If the overhook hand starts to move outward in his attempt to free himself from the underhook, you can hit high crotch. And finally, as another setup for high crotch, this is in combination with your heel catch from underhook. If you have an underhook, and normally you would step between his feet to get the heel catch, This time you want high crotch. So what you do is you take a false step with the wrong foot so that you'll be able to take the correct high crotch step to the outside and hit high crotch on the other side. So you're faking a heel catch to one side, to the far side, and you're executing a high crotch to the near side. They work in combination with one another if you're good at executing both and are athletic enough to take a false step and go a different direction. We're going to demonstrate power trip next, but before even doing that, we want to mention, perhaps reiterate, because it perhaps is already on film, the drag series that we teach. You not only want to learn individual takedowns, you want to have takedowns that work in combination with one another or work off the same grip. So we're going to get a wrist purchase, we're going to get our opponent's wrist, and we're going to do a drag action. And we're not going to go through all the little fine points of a drag because they're already on film. But we're going to step in and then get the hamstring, come in behind him, do the drag. That's one move in the drag series. The second move is the power trip. And essentially what we're going to do is slap the man's forearm, send a stimulus to his brain that we're about to do drag again, when in fact we are not. And if he thinks we're going to do drag, he doesn't want to get pulled forward, so he's probably going to brace against being pulled forward. That puts weight on a foot, in fact on both feet, so that we can go in for the power trip. We step between his feet, hook our heel behind his lower leg, get arm across body so he can't re-drag us, and dump him backwards by driving in. That's power trip, and we'll come back to it in a moment. The third move in the series is that same initial action. We tap the forearm, we step between his feet and get behind his heel. But now, when we get that far, if he's alert to what we're doing, he'll step out of the trip if he can. We continue flowing forward right into double leg drop grip. So power trip can work in and of itself. It can also lead to a double leg drop grip very simply. And the fourth and final move in the series is offside single. We hit the forearm again as a distraction. Again, he's with the thought we're coming in on him in some way that he thinks he knows, but instead we're going to the opposite side, or the side he probably anticipates us. And we spin to the rear, do a shin block, bump with our shoulder, and come up with waist and ankle for control. And that's the little drag series. Now back to the power trip. The main concern when you're doing a power trip is that you not come in too high. If you come in too high, you could possibly, conceivably, be pancaked. So we try to make sure we don't come in high where we'd be vulnerable to a pancake. Outside of that, there's almost no danger in the power trip. As long as you get arm across body, you're ensured that you're going to get the takedown if in fact you can actually triple. As long as you get hand across body and hand under armpit. So here we go. We get the wrist, we tap the forearm, we step low and deep behind his leg, arm across body, dump him to the rear. And if at this juncture he happens to rotate in toward us, then we will see the opportunity for a half Nelson, clear our legs from his legs, and go in for the pin. One more time from a different angle. Tap the forearm. Step deep between his legs. If he rotates inward, we want to look for that half Nelson. Always on a takedown, we're looking for a finger. All right, the next move is Schrader. It's not a move highly recommended. It can be done from standing. We can get in the grip position from which it would be done from standing, where your head is underneath his chest or his arm a bit, and Schrader could be executed from here. But it's not something we recommend. In fact, we don't recommend highly execution of Schrader anywhere. It's just that sometimes you're in a position where its execution is called for and would be helpful, so we do tend to try to learn the move pretty well. We're going to do it from kneeling. If you're caught underneath, your head's underneath the man's chest, and you have this arm grip like so, as you see, what you can do is sit through, lock his hip with your hand, so that he can't step around and cover you. And you continue rotating until his shoulder is practically on the mat. At that point, you come in behind, holding his arm still, and you hook his leg. And then you work to free your arm, and you get control points. You get 2 points there. One more time. You have his arm, good grip on it. Your head is caught under. You do a little sit through. You block his hip with the back of your hand. Try to make sure your upper body is perpendicular to the mat so you're not overextended, which would make it difficult to complete the move. You continue rotating until your shoulder and his are practically on the mat, and then you come in and hook the leg, free your arm, and get control points. If as you're doing that, your opponent tries to climb, he tries to jump up on your back, then you change from a hand block on his leg to a fireman's carry. You just dump them off you and then finish whatever way you would normally finish a fireman's carry. If, as you're doing a Schrader, he's sweaty and or your grip on his arm is just not sufficient, then, or he starts to back off, he starts to crawl backward away from your Schrader, which overextends you, then you change to a little short drag. Do a drag on his arm and get in behind his arms to get control points. One more time on that one, because that is the thing that is most likely to occur whenever you're doing a Schrader, is that you'll have to change to a drag. As you turn, you find you're in a position where you can change to a little short drag, get go behind points. Shrug is next on our list. It's a terrific movement because it is so available in so many bouts that kids wrestle at almost any level of competition. So it's a move much worth knowing. Now, some of the very fundamental aspects of the shrug. First thing I'll mention is that it's a 1-2 type grip that you have to get. You don't go up for the collar and the upper arm at the same time. You go up for the collar first, then the upper arm. That's the 1-2 aspect of it. It's not a slap move, in other words. You don't go up there 2 hands at once. It's just not going to work. Also, when you do the shrug, you want to take a step. You've got to move your lower body forward. You've got to take a step forward to the outside. And as you do it, you bring your head around and down. And you deliver the man straight ahead. You don't bring him out to the side. He should go directly straight ahead of where he's facing. So we'll do it one more time so that we don't take the man at all to the side, not even diagonally to the side. So we get the grip in a 1-2 fashion. We take a step to the outside. We bring our head around and downward and deliver the opponent straight ahead and just slip in behind his arms, and you get an easy 2 points. One more time from a different angle now. We get the grip, outside collar that is, and upper arm, thumb above his elbow and to the outside of his arm. We step, a short step to the outside. We bring our head around and down and deliver the opponent straight ahead and come in behind his arms and get an easy 2 points. Now you've got to be alert for opportunities to execute shrug. It can be a big help. That is, it can bring easy points. So you want to program ahead because the move is only open for an instant, perhaps, on most occasions, and you've got to be ready for that instant. If your opponent happens to lock up a lot, up on the feet, and he tends to either lean or drive, as we'll demonstrate now, if your opponent happens to be a guy that leans, lean forward. Stop right there. Now, with him leaning forward, he's got the collar grip, and he happens to be leaning forward, almost using you as a post. He's made himself vulnerable to a shrug grip and to a shrug action. So what you do is you get the outside collar grip, and you take advantage of the fact he's using you as support, and you do the shrug and deliver him straight ahead, and come in behind him and get points. If instead of leaning, he actually drives into you, he gets collared, he tries to drive you off the mat, perhaps. What you can do is get the outside collar grip, take the step in toward him to the outside, and then bring your head around and down, deliver them past you, and get your easy. All right, now heel catch can be worked defensively against a shrug, I should say, can be worked defensively against a heel catch. And we're going to demonstrate that right now. If we anticipate that our opponent is going to do heel catch, and he's going to have to kneel to do it, which is normally the case, we take an outside collar grip in anticipation of his heel catch attempt. As he goes down for the heel catch, he is vulnerable to shrug action. All right, one more time. If the opponent has collar, and we take outside collar, and we anticipate he's going down for a heel catch, we can use shrug as a defensive maneuver against his attempted heel catch and get points. And we consider the ideal position for shrug, him being down and ourselves being up. If ever we get that sort of situation, him down, kneeling, and we're upstanding, and him vulnerable to the shrug, it's just altogether easy to execute it for points. Now you can also use shrug offensively relative to the heel catch. An old combination is where you have outside collar grip against the opponent, and you circle, circle, circle. Now you have this outside collar grip against the opponent, and you circle merry-go-round style and go for a cross heel pick. And as you go down for that cross heel pick, he withdraws his foot so you can't have the heel. You can change to a shrug. It's not a maneuver that's going to be worked by many or even a few often, but there is such a combination. One more time, we call it the Iowa combo. You have outside collar grip, you circle, you go after a heel pick, and as he withdraws his foot and he's leaning forward, you've got the outside grip. He's vulnerable to the shrug. You can execute the shrug. We're going to show some combinations that work, some more combinations that work with shrug. We've talked about shrug as a defensive maneuver against an attempted heel catch. We've talked about shrug as an offense maneuver off a heel catch attempt by ourselves. And now we're just going to mention a couple items where you could be looking for something and it won't be there because the other fellow's conscious of what you're looking for, but he makes himself vulnerable to another move that you could execute. For example, if you have shrug outside collar grip, and you'd like to get an angle on your opponent, which is pretty ideal. You try to circle a little bit so you're not face to face, but you're on a slight angle with him. But he won't allow that. Then what you can do is forget about shrug momentarily and get high crotch grip, and then do a quick distraction perhaps and go right into high crotch. So if the shrug isn't there because the opponent keeps turning to face you as you try to create a slight angle and get away from the absolute face-to-face position, he makes himself vulnerable to high crotch grip and the high crotch itself. One more time. You'd like to get shrug, and you'd like to cheat to the side and get an angle so you can execute the shrug more easily, but he won't allow that. He keeps you directly in front of him. Then let go of the shrug grip, that is the collar grip, part of it, and grab his elbow for a high crotch, maybe do a quick distraction with your free hand, play for his hand, do high crotch, and get your points. Second item would be if you're looking for a headlock. You've got a collar, he's got a collar, and you perhaps have an attitude, you have an outside grip, an overhang grip on the outside. You'd like to go for a headlock, but you just sense that he's aware that you're looking for that. Instead of going for the headlock that would take him to the one side, you can change grips, that is, go for outside collar on the other side and do a shrug. So sometimes when headlock is sought, wanted, looked for, but it isn't actually there, your opponent's kind of wary, he's conscious of what you're after, you can switch direction, go to the other side, and do a shrug. One more time. Your interest is to get a headlock, but the opponent is kind of in a position where you sense it's not something I could get, he's pretty much aware that I'm interested, then instead of going for the headlock, what you can do is change your grip, go for the collar with your other hand, and execute a shrug. Another little combo, if you shrug a man and he runs through your shrug, that is, he knows it's coming and he propels himself past you, as he goes by and he turns to face you, you can go in on a single leg drop. One more time. Shrug the single head in. Shrug him. He runs past. He goes with it. He turns to face. You're in on his leg as a follow-up maneuver. If as you shrug, your opponent covers your legs, he circles into you so that you can't get him by you, then you change to what we call an Oki headlock. Drop down, entwine your leg around his leg, lock your hands, and do a lift over and put him on his back. You'll get the control points. That same move from a different angle. If you attempt to shrug and your opponent covers you as you execute the shrug action, step, but he covers, then what you do is you bring him down to the mat, you entwine your leg with his, that is, hook his leg with your instep, you lock your hands, and then do a lift over. Put him on his back and get the points. Now bring him back to the other side. All right, as another combo from standing, executing the shrug in combination with something, we're going to do a shrug action, and then we're going to do a heel block off it to a whirl down. So you start the shrug, and you're not able to fully execute it. You're not able to bring the opponent forward enough. So what you do is a heel block, and then you use the two grips that you have, the arm and the collar, and you whirl the guy down to his side rear. One more time. You've got outside collar. You're attempting a shrug, but you're not able to deliver him forward enough to actually finish it. Instead of doing like as you wish, you do a heel block, and then with the two grips that you have, the upper arm and the collar, you whirl him around and down to the side rear. And still another combination would be body lock. If as you do a standing shrug, the man doesn't go forward and down, he goes forward only, you can come in behind him, try to trap an arm, and get body lock. And you would either trip him down from here or do a body lift. But either way, you want to make sure you do get the points. If you're going to do the body lift, you would do, as always, squat, squeeze, pop your hips, get them in the air, bring them down sideways, and get your points. Now, shrug can also be done from kneeling. Sometimes you do a quick sit out and turn in, and you get neutral, but instead of standing back up, let him reach out and grab your collar. And when he grabs your collar, you can then take outside collar, cheat to the side a little bit to get a little angle, step up slightly to the outside, forward to the outside, and then do the regular shrug. Head around and down, thumb across behind his upper arm so that you can execute. One more time. From kneeling, you have outside collar, you cheat a little bit, step up to the outside slightly, you bring your thumb across to the outside of his upper arm, you bring your head around and down and deliver him directly straight ahead. Now, if your opponent, as you're doing that, somehow is able to get his hand down off your collar and bring it across your body so that you wouldn't be able to get a go behind, his arm across body would prevent it, what you can do is change to a pancake. Just take them the opposite direction of pancake. One more time. You've got the outside collar. You're executing a shrug, but somehow he releases off your collar, the grip that he had, and he gets arm across body, which would prevent a go behind. You change it to something else, and that something else is a pancake. So shrug is an excellent move. It can be worked in combination with other moves. It's worth knowing in and of itself because it can bring many points to most any wrestler because opponents seem to be so much vulnerable, so many of them at least, seem to be so much vulnerable to shrug. it's worth anyone's knowing. If you get good at it, then you'll of course want to learn combinations that go with it so that you can be all the more potent in terms of point scoring from shrug and its combos. All right, I'm going to act like a voice in the wilderness here for a moment, and where we can, we're going to simulate some of these general items, but I'm going to be talking about takedown defense in general, and I'll mention a certain handful of items. Number one is stance. Stance is vital whether you're talking offense or defense on the feet, and although stances can vary with the individual, in general, for most people, we want our head up, not down. We want our back tilted forward, but only slightly. We don't want to be way bent over. We want our hips, if not under our head, nearly so. We don't want to be overextended. We want our knees bent at least slightly for offense and defense, for quickness defending and quickness penetrating. We want our feet spread sufficiently for balance. We want our hands up and close to our own chest. And we want our elbows pretty close to our own ribs. And that's if we're in a square stance. If we were in a staggered stance, then we would modify the above wherever appropriate. We do pretty much the same things, but we might be slightly different in appearance and approach. We'd also, with regard to stance, want to keep our rump down. We want to bend our knees, to drop our hips, to lower our carriage position, to increase stability and to enable better offense and defense. And also, as mentioned earlier, we want to keep our arms within the width of our own shoulders, and not just when in stance, but when locking up. When we reach out to lock up with somebody, we don't want our elbows way out to the side. We want to keep our elbows in front of us. We tend to maintain a facing position with our opponent's head. If he moves to one side, we move with him and keep him in front of us. Regarding motion, motion is vital. We don't want to stand still. We don't want to stand flat-footed and make ourselves easy targets. Also, we don't want to wade in. We'll demonstrate what we mean by wading in. By that, we mean just walking forward toward him in. If you go straight in toward him, that we call wading in, and we don't care to see that done. If you're with a worldwide reputation as a champion, you might be able to get away with something like that. But until that well-renowned, we advise that you not invite trouble by wading in. And also, you don't want to get sucked in. If your opponent backs off, if you allow yourself to get sucked in as opponent backs off, you may be setting yourself up to be taken down because you're bringing a leg forward or both legs forward. He could shoot and penetrate on you very easily. Now, he might get called for stalling for backing up, but if he doesn't, you've made yourself vulnerable to a leg drop. Also, when in tie-up, you don't want to tend to drive or lean. If you lean on your opponent or drive, you could get hit with a throw, a sag headlock. Any type of headlock is very much a possibility, as are other types of throws. When you tie up with your opponent, tend to do it at different levels. Don't always be too predictable. Just vary your tie-up level. Keep him guessing as to what's perhaps coming. So stance is vital. Motion is vital. Poise is vital. That's item 3. You have to relax somewhat. Tend not to tense self or opponent because you want to conceal your intent. You want to smoothen your execution, and you want to conserve energy. So you tend to relax a little bit. If your wrists or arms are tied up, then you would use your head to block or fend. When you don't have wrists or arms to block with, your head can be put in the way of opponent. If opponent attacks, do not jump in an effort to withdraw. Either sprawl properly, that is, get your legs back and let your hips sag, or apply aggressive defense. For example, you could execute a turn against a... For example, if double leg drop is anticipated,